Good morning. Got a lot of people asking me this. Is there a book on this? Are there sources for this? And here's the thing that y'all don't get, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Let me explain. I was born in 1976 in a town called Rock Hill, and at the time Rock Hill was about this big. It was a rural area where I came up in. Actually, the whole fucking place was rural. I gotta sit there. Anyway, we only had 5 channels of TV until I was, my God, like 14. No such thing as the internet until I was like 20. And on top of that, I was not a normal child. So I asked for books for Christmas and birthdays. I did have toys, but also asked for books, but not normal books. Resource books, like Reader's Digest, Wildlife of North America. There was no bookstores, so we couldn't shop for these books. So you would get catalogs sent to your house that sold resource books. I'm not talking about the ones that sold regular books. I'm talking about resource books. And we were really poor, so I could only get the informational resource books maybe once a year, and I could only have like one. So if I was lucky, once a month, my mom would drive me to the public library and leave me there for the whole day. It was like one of my favorite places to go. And I would spend all day reading resource books. I know it's not normal, but that was my hobby. I didn't look things up in the encyclopedia. I read the entire encyclopedia. And then if I found something that interested me in the encyclopedia, then I would go find the resource books for it. But considering I was in a town that was about this big, my library only would have like 1 or 2 resource books about a subject. So, and you can't check out resource books, so you have to read them at the library. So I would read these huge books, and then if I wasn't satisfied with the information, which I rarely was, this is how you got more information, okay? Resource books always have several pages of bibliographies where they conglomerated their information from. So you would go into the back of the resource book and get the titles from that bibliographies. Then you would take the titles that you needed to the librarian, and that librarian, if they were books, would order them from another library within your state. That takes 2 weeks or so to get mailed to that library. So they borrow it from another library. But if none of the libraries in your state had that book, then you would have to borrow a copy from the Library of Congress. They would have to order the book to have it now be a part of their library. And if it was an article, which a lot of this information is, scholastic and archaeological articles, they didn't send you the article. Then you had to wait for the microfiche of the article. If y'all even know what microfiche is. The microfiche of the article had to then be sent to the library. At which point they would call you on your phone that's on the wall with a cord to tell you that that information was there. Then I had to wait for my mom to, again, maybe twice a month at most, to drop me off at the library. And then I could spend the whole day taking in these books or reading this microfiche. And that takes years. When you're going through different books and different subjects, it takes years to get through all the information available for that subject. And I did this with a shit ton of subjects. So I would have one day, 8 hours, to get in all the book information and microfiche that I could. Luckily, my librarian was a nerd, and she just thought, I would have been like the teacher's pet. So she would not send those books back until I was completed with them. That is literally how I gathered the vast majority of the knowledge that I have on different subjects like the Sumerians and the links between the pantheons and stuff like that. So since y'all have the entire, all libraries and stuff at your fingertips, okay, the first thing, if you really want to know the information, is you need to buy access to websites like JSTOR or the other one that have the academic journals and papers, the scientific and archaeological journals and papers. The next thing you want to do is look up a resource book for that information. So you would look up a resource book on the Anunnaki or the Anunnaki translations. For instance, if you this is the keyword y'all need to use, okay? So if you put in academic resource on Sumerian cuneiform translation, which is what I put, you will get, there's more down there, you will get plenty of reliable, non-trend affected information on what you're looking for. This right here is the key, okay? And it's not what today is considered interesting reading. So it's your passion to understand that is what's going to make this stuff interesting. Each of these sites have multiple ways to find that information. And some of these sites are from Oxford, Harvard, and Yale. The other technique that I use for finding out information was not taught to y'all in school. I know, I have a child. It was not taught to you, okay? So I'm going to give you the crash version. That is when I'm speaking about how there was a break. We had animism, then we had the arrival of deities, and then we had deity worship after that. So this comes from noticing a trend in the information you're reading, okay? So for instance, no matter what book that I read regarding civilization and deity worship, the deity worship all started around the same time in all cultures. This it's not written anywhere. Well, it probably is now, but this is from me reading culture after culture, resource after resource, and going, it seems like they all started deity worship around the same time. So let me go back and re-verify that. So I go back to the resources and verify that, yes, there's a very clear line of delineation where mankind went from animism, like the base animism, that is the framework for what we know as Native American spirituality. Each tribe is very different, but the skeleton of it is that everything has spirit, okay? Then there is a line of demarcation where deity worship comes into play. Then I started looking for the oldest records, whether written or pictograph, drawing art, whatever, of deity worship. You have to start with the oldest first. And I'm going to tell you why. So originally, many of the gods and deities that we know today have been split or combined. So you have to go back to the very, very oldest ones. And that's when I noticed this. I noticed that when the deities came down, whatever those were, and they came on the scene, there was a distinct effort in every single culture to categorize the animism that they once only worshipped and the deities that were now in play. I'm going to give you Greek, the pantheon as an example. So the Titans, Cronus and them, those aren't actual beings. Those are what we now refer to commonly as the primordial. So they're actually forces. The same thing happened with the Sumerians. The old things that were forces were considered the very created. They're the forces, the cosmos, water, time, the things that are beyond human comprehension were classified as the beginning. The deities would end up being the children of those primordial forces. And every culture did it. So they rectified what was with what now is. So when I was like, oh my God, and I went and checked that, it's the same in every single culture. And then I was like, they all did the same thing, and they all switched from the animism to the deity thing. So when you find the oldest pantheon of each culture, there's a running theme, and they all are talking about the exact same group of beings that were physically here. They all have the main leader guy. He is usually over thunder. Sometimes he's over wind or air, but usually thunder. The underworld is always in a female form, always. I think there's one, oh my God, in Malaysia or something that's a male. But you'll notice these themes. That's why I tell y'all Hades is not the main guy in hell. It's just that Greece was a patriarchal society, and they switched it. Persephone was the main Mac Daddy. Hades was just her consort. That's why you have to go back to the originals. And what I did was I made basically a flow chart, right? Of first up here was what we consider the primordials. And then I would list like the common ones. I started with the oldest ones. Oldest written. We're going to get to the unwritten in a minute, but the oldest written. So the Sumerian and blah, 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 blah. And then I would do a flow chart down, and they all match up exactly. But sometimes deities are combined, and sometimes they're split. And you can only find that information by looking up the information on each culture and finding the oldest academic sources of that culture's pantheon. And a lot of people don't want to do that, but there is not a concentrated resource. And if I did it, it would take up all my time and take several years. There is 2 cultures that I want to pull out from the rest during this time, and that is the Hindu religion, and I think it's West African that did the Orisha. Okay, and the reason I want to pull these out is because they are the 2 belief systems that did not cave to the pantheons. And this is going to get you're going to have to follow me here. Okay, let's start with Hinduism. Now, today's Hinduism has been really mucked up, just like the original Christianity was nothing like it is today, and humans effed it up. The Hindu religion, the same thing has been done, okay? Which is why I don't do today's, I do the original. And why the majority of Hindu that I've come across will tell you this. So I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. I actually was taught Hinduism by Indian Hindus. So even though when you're on the outside looking into Hinduism, you see gods and goddesses, and they seem to be in a pantheon, that is not the case. I'm sure you have heard that Hinduism has millions of gods, and they do. And let me explain to you why. So, Hindus and Hinduism, that originated with the Indo-Aryan area. And I don't mean Aryan, okay? The Indo-Aryan region. And the basis for that is the original premise, what we now in civilization understand as what God actually is. And that is a force that runs through everything that is natural within the universe. So everything that is not a man-made material, okay? It is not a conscious dude that over stuff. So when you are wanting to focus on an aspect of your life that you need work on or you need help with, you pick that aspect out of God. For instance, I had some very bad habits. Everything from attitude to substance to mental illness, just very nasty things about me that I got to a point in my life where I wanted to fix. Sorry. And I wanted divine help. I didn't think this would make me emotional. Hold on. So I chose Lord Shiva. He has many facets, but the one that I focused on the most is Lord Shiva, the Destroyer. And the way it works with Lord Shiva is, think of a wildfire. It does destroy, but out of that destruction becomes new beginnings. So that's why I chose Lord Shiva, and I still worship Lord Shiva today. If you are having difficulties in academics or the arts, so you would pick Saraswati. And the list goes on and on. If you're broke, you lost your job or whatever, then you would choose Lord Ganesh. And there are millions of things that you need help with. And that's why there are millions of gods, in order for you to focus on that particular aspect of which you need help with. So, in Hinduism, the deities are not the spiritual selves of the deities that were actually living here. They are not. And that's why I really get heated when I try to explain to Pagan and Witch TikTok about Kali. That is not a deity that you're working with. You are working with something, and if y'all remind me, I'll touch on that later, but you are not working with Kali, or Kali, whatever you want to call her. Continuing on. The other culture that did not go that way is, I believe it's West African, is the Orisha. So nowadays, the Orisha appear pantheonized, but the original Orisha are not. Period. They are different aspects of God are given names in order to tell stories and tell how things were created, but they are not pantheonized. And with the Orisha, it's so much more complicated, and I think it's because colonizers took a really long time to get to everyone. So you will not see me speak on African traditions because they are so old and were transpired through word of mouth for so old. They are so intricate and complicated that I could never know enough to explain them correctly. You will also not hear me speak on Aboriginal spirituality for the exact same reason. You will not hear me speak on Native American, North America and Canada, or North America, for the same reasons. There were running themes through different tribes' spiritual beliefs, but each tribe's beliefs were so intricate that you will not hear me speak on them. Now, the information I did have and that I just spoke to you about is by going through so many different resource books, as I spoke about before. So many different ones over years and years. And seeing a theme and going back and double checking my theme. So there will never be a book that I can suggest for you guys. There isn't. It would be a massive, like, codex compendium. And that's why when y'all ask me for resources, I'm just like, that's just not possible. It's not me gatekeeping. It's about a passion for things. And the best I can do is show you and demonstrate to you how I got that information. It should be much quicker for you, you guys. You have an entire computer in your hand. All right.